In a remote, desolate planet at the edge of known space, a young girl named Arya stumbled upon a creature that would change her life forever. She was only 12 years old, but had already seen more of the universe than most humans. Her parents, scientists, and explorers had taken her from one uncharted world to another, each with its unique ecosystems, its strange flora and fauna. Arya had always been curious, but this new discovery pushed her curiosity into a space she'd never ventured before, one layered with fear and wonder. Arya had wandered from her parents' makeshift camp to explore the surrounding canyons. She loved the quiet solitude of the alien landscape, the sense of discovery that hung thick in the air. But on this particular day, she wasn't alone. She heard the faintest sound, a low, rumbling growl mixed with a soft whimper, barely audible but enough to send shivers down her spine. Creeping forward, heart pounding, she saw it. Nestled in a shadowed crevice between two rocks lay a creature unlike any she had ever encountered. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered with a metallic hue, each scale edged with tiny, delicate ridges that looked both deadly and mesmerizing. It had wings folded against its body, and the suggestion of fire burned within its dark, intelligent eyes. But those eyes were not wild or aggressive. They held a softness, a vulnerability that tugged at Arya's heart. The creature, an alien dragon, she realized, had a thorn lodged deeply in the corner of its mouth. Its scales glistened with alien blood where the thorn had pierced, and the dragon's breathing was labored. Its body curled tightly in a mix of pain and fear. She froze, her mind racing. She knew this creature could easily harm her if it wanted to, but it looked so wounded, so desperate, that Arya's fear gave way to an overwhelming sense of compassion. Slowly, cautiously, she approached. Each step felt like a plunge into the unknown, her heart pounding as the creature's eyes followed her, narrowing slightly. She knelt beside it, close enough to see the intricate detail of its scales, the way they shifted slightly with each painful breath it took. She extended a hand, trembling toward its face. "Hey there," she whispered, her voice as soft and calm as she could manage. "I'm not here to hurt you, I just want to help." The dragon didn't move, but its eyes shifted from her face to her hand and back, as if it were trying to assess her intentions. Arya's gaze fell on the thorn, a brutal blackened spike lodged in the corner of the creature's mouth. It was unlike any plant or mineral she'd seen on the planet so far, twisted and sharp, clearly the source of the dragon's suffering. She took a deep breath and reached out again, her fingers brushing against its scales. The creature flinched, a deep rumble echoing in its chest, but it didn't pull away. Encouraged, she gently laid her hand on its snout, feeling the warmth radiating from its body, the faint vibration of its breathing. The dragon's eyes closed for a brief moment, almost as if it were letting down its guard, surrendering its pain to her care. Carefully, she examined the thorn. It was embedded deep, its twisted form snagged against the dragon's scales. Arya knew she would need to pull it out in one swift motion, but she hesitated. One wrong move, and she might worsen the creature's pain or provoke its wrath. She steeled herself, gripping the thorn with both hands. "All right," she whispered, as much to herself as to the dragon. This might hurt. With a single, determined motion, she yanked the thorn free. The dragon let out a roar, its head jerking up, wings unfurling in a flash of iridescent light. Arya stumbled backward, heart racing as she watched the creature rise, towering over her, its massive wings casting shadows across the canyon. For a terrifying moment, she thought it would retaliate, that it might unleash whatever alien fire it held within. But instead, the dragon lowered its head toward her, its eyes meeting hers in a gaze that held both gratitude and something deeper, a recognition, perhaps, of the kindness she had shown. It let out a low, rumbling purr, and for the first time, Arya allowed herself to smile. She reached out tentatively, brushing her fingers over the place where the thorn had been, now a small scar among its glittering scales. The dragon made no move to stop her. It simply watched her with a kind of silent reverence, its powerful body now relaxed, its breathing steady. "See? That wasn't so bad," she murmured, as if comforting both herself and the creature. She stayed there for a while, just watching it, marveling at its beauty, its strange, almost mystical presence. She had read about dragons in Earth's mythology, but those creatures were nothing compared to the majestic, otherworldly being before her. And then, as if in response to her thoughts, the dragon extended one massive wing, sweeping it around her in a gesture that felt almost protective. It lowered its head, nudging her with its snout, urging her to climb on. She hesitated, glancing back toward the direction of her camp, but something deep within her, an instinct she couldn't quite explain, compelled her to trust the creature. With a mixture of excitement and fear, she climbed onto its back, feeling the rough texture of its scales beneath her hands. The dragon rose to its full height, spreading its wings wide. In one powerful motion, they took off, soaring into the alien sky. Arya held on tight as they climbed higher and higher, the world below shrinking to a patchwork of rugged cliffs and winding canyons. The wind whipped at her face, carrying with it the scent of unfamiliar minerals and distant storms. She looked down, watching the landscape rush by beneath them, feeling a thrill that was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The dragon flew with an effortless grace, weaving through towering rock formations and gliding over vast, shimmering plains. Arya felt a sense of exhilaration she'd only ever read about, a freedom that transcended anything she'd known on her previous travels with her parents. Up here, in the vast expanse of an alien sky, she felt small but powerful, insignificant, but somehow essential. They flew for what felt like hours, the dragon guiding her through a landscape that shifted from jagged mountains to rolling plains, each region more surreal and breathtaking than the last. They passed over glistening pools of liquid metal, rivers that glowed with an ethereal light, and fields of strange, bioluminescent plants that pulsed like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Finally, they descended toward a hidden valley nestled between two towering peaks. The dragon landed gently, allowing her to slide off its back. She looked around, realizing that the valley was unlike anything she'd seen so far. It was filled with alien flora, plants with twisting vines and flowers that emitted a soft, warm light, illuminating the valley in hues of gold and green. As she explored, she noticed a pattern carved into the rocks, a symbol, perhaps, or a language. The markings seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic glow, as if they were alive, as if they were speaking to her in a language she couldn't quite understand. She turned to the dragon, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What is this place?" she asked, not expecting an answer. To her surprise, the dragon stepped forward, pressing its snout against the markings on the rock. The symbols glowed brighter, casting the dragon's face in a warm, golden light. Arya felt a tingling sensation, a whisper at the edge of her mind, as if the valley itself were trying to communicate with her. Images flooded her mind, visions of a world long past, of dragons soaring through skies filled with strange, crystalline structures, of beings that looked like humans but weren't, their forms shifting and changing with every movement. She saw flashes of battles, of alliances, of the dragon's ancestors standing alongside creatures that might have been early explorers, sharing knowledge and wisdom that spanned galaxies. And then she saw it, the thorn. In the vision, it appeared not as a simple, painful shard, but as a weapon, a tool of control wielded by shadowy figures who sought to subjugate and dominate. The thorn, it seemed, was no ordinary object. It was designed to bind and manipulate creatures like the dragon, to render them powerless and enslaved. Arya's heart raced as the vision faded, leaving her breathless. She turned to the dragon, her voice barely a whisper. "They hurt you." "They tried to control you," The dragon's eyes met hers, and in that silent gaze she felt an understanding pass between them, a bond forged not through words, but through shared pain and defiance. She understood now that the thorn had been more than a physical wound. It had been a symbol of oppression, a mark of those who sought to control and diminish. By removing it, she had not only freed the dragon from pain, but from a past that had haunted its kind for generations. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Arya sat beside the dragon, feeling a quiet resolve settle within her. She knew that her journey with this creature was far from over. There were still mysteries to uncover, stories to learn, and perhaps a way to heal the wounds of the past. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Arya looked up, a sense of determination in her gaze. Arya sat beside the dragon, her mind racing with the visions she had seen, a tapestry of history and oppression woven into the fabric of this strange, alien valley. She felt the weight of it all, a dizzying sense that she had been entrusted with a piece of something ancient and powerful, something far beyond her years. The dragon lay still beside her, its breathing slow and deep, a low rumble emanating from its chest, as if it were lost in its own thoughts. The silence was broken by a sharp crack echoing through the valley. Arya snapped to attention, her eyes scanning the surrounding cliffs. Her heart pounded as she realized they were not alone. Figures, armored, faceless and efficient, were descending the cliffs, their forms half hidden in the fading light. They moved with precision, their eyes focused, each step silent and calculated. She knew at once they were human, but not like her. These were soldiers, sentinels of some hidden agenda. "Stay down," she whispered to the dragon, as if it would understand. But the creature merely raised its head, eyes narrowing as it caught sight of the intruders. The dragon's muscles tensed, its wings unfurling slightly as it positioned itself between Arya and the approaching soldiers. One of the soldiers stepped forward, a sleek, metallic device clutched in his hand. He looked at the dragon with something between reverence and cruelty, as if it were both a treasure and a conquest. His voice was cold, modulated through the helmet. "Stand back, child. That creature is property of the Unity Corps. Unauthorized interaction with classified species carries severe consequences." Arya felt her throat tighten. She recognized the Unity Corps from whispers, from stories her parents had shared in hushed voices. They were an organization that veiled its true intentions behind words like protection and exploration, but they were known for claiming entire planets, enslaving indigenous species, and bending alien ecosystems to their will. She had never encountered them personally, but she had heard enough to understand the stakes. "This dragon isn't your property," Arya said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "It's not some object you can own. It's alive." "It saved me." The soldier's mask betrayed no emotion, but his silence spoke volumes. He raised the device, a glint of something dark and vicious in his posture. "Step aside, or you'll join it in containment." The dragon rumbled, a low, warning growl. It shifted, its massive body coiled like a spring, ready to unleash its fury. Arya realized that this creature, so majestic, so powerful, had been subdued by these people before. The thorn, that horrible device embedded in its flesh, was their handiwork, a tool designed to break its spirit, to render it docile. The dragon's scarred mouth was proof of their cruelty. Arya knew she had no chance against the soldiers. She was just a child, unarmed, with nothing but the clothes on her back. But she also knew that the dragon would not survive another encounter with these people. They would trap it, control it, turn it into a weapon or a slave. And somehow, she couldn't bear that thought. She couldn't bear to lose the creature that had shown her the beauty of this world. Without thinking, she took a step forward, positioning herself directly between the dragon and the soldier. "No," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "If you want to get to it, you'll have to go through me." There was a brief, charged silence. The soldier looked at her, his mask blank and expressionless. With a dismissive gesture, he motioned to the others. Restrain the girl. Two soldiers moved forward, arms outstretched to grab her. But before they could touch her, the dragon let out a roar, a sound so fierce it seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. In a flash, it rose to its full height, wings spread wide, scales gleaming in the twilight. The soldiers stumbled back, momentarily blinded by the dragon's sheer power and fury. Arya saw her chance. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the dragon's side, feeling the heat radiating from its scales. "Let's get out of here," she whispered desperately, hoping the creature could sense her urgency, her fear. She didn't know if the dragon would understand, but somehow she felt a connection, a silent understanding between them. The dragon responded, lifting her onto its back with a swift, graceful movement. She barely had time to grip onto its scales before it launched itself into the air, wings beating with the force of a storm. They rose, spiraling upward as the soldiers fired after them, bursts of energy cutting through the night sky. Arya clung to the dragon's back, her heart racing, feeling the rush of wind as they escaped the clutches of the Unity Core. For a moment, she thought they were free. The sky stretched out before them, endless and filled with stars, a vast expanse of safety. But then she saw it, a massive, metallic craft rising from the shadows below, sleek and menacing, its engines roaring to life as it locked onto their position. "Of course they have a ship," she muttered bitterly to herself. She felt the dragon shift beneath her, its muscles tensing as it prepared to dive. The craft fired, beams of light slicing through the air, narrowly missing them as the dragon twisted and turned, evading with an agility that defied its massive size. But the ship was relentless, matching their every move, closing in with each passing second. Arya's mind raced. She had to think of something, anything, to give them a chance. She scanned the landscape below, searching for cover, for some way to lose their pursuers. Her eyes landed on a dense forest of alien trees, their branches thick and tangled, glowing faintly with bioluminescent light. "Down there!" she shouted, pointing toward the forest. The dragon understood. It dove, plummeting toward the trees with breathtaking speed. Arya held on tight, feeling the rush of wind and adrenaline as they descended. They plunged into the forest, branches whipping past them, the dragon weaving between trees with impossible precision. The craft slowed, hovering above the forest, its searchlights piercing the canopy as it tried to locate them. Arya and the dragon moved in silence, hidden beneath the cover of the trees. She could hear her own heartbeat, feel the dragon's steady breaths beneath her. The forest was dense, its strange foliage casting eerie shadows, but it provided the perfect cover. She could only hope that the soldiers wouldn't dare follow them on foot. They moved deeper into the forest, away from the lights and the sounds of the hovering craft. The dragon walked carefully, its body low, each step calculated to avoid snapping any branches or disturbing the thick undergrowth. Arya's mind raced, replaying the encounter in her head, trying to piece together what had just happened. "Why?" she whispered, more to herself than to the dragon. "Why would they go to so much trouble for you?" The dragon turned its head as if it had heard her, its eyes gleaming in the dim light. She realized that there was a mystery here, something deeper than a simple desire to capture a creature. This dragon was important to them, valuable in a way she couldn't fully understand. They stopped in a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to glow with their own faint light. Arya slid off the dragon's back, her legs shaking from the adrenaline. She sat on the ground trying to catch her breath, feeling the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on her. The dragon watched her, its gaze steady and calm, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. For a moment, she felt a strange sense of peace, a fleeting calm in the eye of the storm, but it didn't last. The silence was broken by a faint hum, a low, ominous sound that seemed to vibrate through the air. She looked up, dread pooling in her stomach as she realized the sound was coming from above. The craft hadn't left. It was hovering just beyond the edge of the forest, its searchlights sweeping through the trees, searching, relentless. "They're not giving up," she whispered, a chill running down her spine. She turned to the dragon, desperation in her eyes. "What do we do?" As if in response, the dragon raised its head, letting out a low, resonant call. The sound seemed to ripple through the forest, echoing into the distance. Arya frowned, confused, until she heard an answering call, a faint, distant roar that sent shivers down her spine. She looked at the dragon, realization dawning on her. "You're calling for help?" she asked, incredulous. The dragon didn't respond, but it didn't need to. Moments later, she saw them. Other shapes moving through the trees, shadows that glinted with scales and wings, more dragons, answering the call, emerging from the depths of the forest to stand by their injured kin. Arya felt a surge of hope, mixed with a strange, overwhelming awe. She realized then that this was no ordinary creature, no simple alien being caught in the wrong place. This dragon was part of something larger, something ancient and powerful that spanned beyond her understanding. The soldiers had underestimated them. They had assumed they were capturing a lone creature, a single specimen to be studied and controlled, but they had awakened something far more dangerous, something that would not be caged. Arya stood, placing a hand on the dragon's side, feeling the strength and resilience that radiated from its body. "Let's show them what you're capable of," she whispered, her voice filled with a fierce determination. The dragons spread their wings, their eyes gleaming in the dim light, each one poised and ready. Arya took a deep breath, preparing herself for the battle that lay ahead, knowing that whatever happened, she was no longer alone. The dragons assembled around them, a silent force that radiated power and something deeper, an ancient wisdom, perhaps, or a kinship that transcended language and species. Arya watched them with wide eyes, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. Here she was, a 12-year-old human girl, standing among creatures that defied everything she thought she understood about life and the universe. They weren't mindless beasts, as she'd been taught in school to expect from extraterrestrial fauna. These dragons were a people, a civilization, a family. But as the soldiers' searchlights cut through the treetops, that sense of wonder twisted into something darker. The Unity Corps was a force of order, but not justice. They were relentless and efficient, and they had come prepared. She knew that for them, there would be no hesitation, no question of moral right or wrong. They would cage or kill anything in their way. Hum of the searchlights grew louder, and Arya could see the craft circling above them, methodically scanning the forest. She glanced at the dragons around her, searching for a plan, an escape, anything. But the dragons simply stood, watching her, waiting. She turned to her dragon, the one she had freed, the one who had carried her through the skies and shown her visions of a world beyond imagination. "What do we do now?" she whispered, her voice tinged with a desperation she couldn't hide. The dragon tilted its head, regarding her with a calm, almost ironic gaze. It was as if it were saying, "You're the one who started this, aren't you?" And that's when it hit her, a realization so sharp and bitter it made her feel faint. She had started this. The soldiers hadn't come for the dragons, not at first. They had come because of her, because she had removed the thorn, because she had intervened. She had assumed she was the hero of this story, the brave girl rescuing a helpless creature. But the dragons weren't helpless, and she was no hero. In her ignorance, she had unleashed something that went beyond her understanding, and now they were all paying the price. The thought left her shaken, her conviction crumbling like sand beneath her feet. She looked at the dragon again, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean to. I thought I was helping." The dragon let out a low, rumbling breath, a sound that seemed almost like laughter. It lowered its head, nudging her gently, as if to say, "Intentions are a funny thing, little one." Sometimes they're the first step on the path to ruin. The moment was broken by a burst of light. A flare shot from the ship above, illuminating the entire clearing. Arya stumbled back, shielding her eyes as the soldiers descended, a squad of armored figures dropping into the forest with military precision. They moved in a wide formation, their weapons aimed and ready. Panic surged in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wasn't alone. The dragons were with her, their presence a silent reassurance. But as the soldiers advanced, she felt a flicker of doubt. What chance did they stand against technology so advanced, against an army trained to crush resistance without mercy? A single voice crackled through the air, amplified by a device on one of the soldiers' armor. "We don't want to hurt you," it said, though the voice held a note of malice that contradicted the words. "Hand over the specimen, and we'll let you go." Arya's mind whirled, a dozen responses colliding in her head. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them that these creatures weren't specimens, that they were more alive, more intelligent than the soulless machines they served. But the words caught in her throat. What good would they do here? The soldiers wouldn't listen to her, a child. To them, she was just another complication. Before she could decide what to do, the dragon beside her stepped forward, its massive form casting a shadow over her. The soldiers shifted, their weapons following its every movement. The dragon lifted its head, staring down the armed men with an air of defiance that sent a shiver down Arya's spine. It wasn't afraid, it was ready. With a sudden, fluid motion, the dragon let out a piercing roar and leapt into the air, wings beating with a force that sent a gust of wind through the clearing. The other dragons followed, launching themselves at the soldiers in a coordinated assault. It was a sight both beautiful and terrifying, a flurry of scales and wings and flashing eyes. Soldiers fired, the night erupting in bursts of light and sound. Arya ducked behind a fallen tree, her heart pounding as the battle raged around her. She watched as the dragons twisted and dove, their scales deflecting some of the soldiers' weapons, but not all. One of the dragons was hit, its wing folding as it crashed into the ground with a pained cry. Another soldier aimed his weapon at the dragon beside her, the one she had freed. Without thinking, Arya grabbed a rock and hurled it at the soldier, striking his helmet with a satisfying crack. "Hey! Over here!" she shouted, hoping to draw their attention away from the dragons, to buy them a few precious seconds. The soldier turned toward her, his face hidden behind the reflective visor, and she saw her own reflection in its cold, unfeeling surface. A small, desperate girl, defiant in the face of something she could barely comprehend. But before he could react, the dragon lunged, slamming into him with a force that sent him sprawling. The creature roared again, a sound filled with fury and pain, and Arya felt a surge of something she couldn't name, a fierce pride, perhaps, or a primal satisfaction in seeing these creatures fight back against those who sought to cage them. Yet the fight was brutal, and the soldiers were relentless. For every soldier the dragons felled, another two took his place, moving with ruthless efficiency, their weapons calibrated to exploit the dragon's few vulnerabilities. Arya's mind raced, searching for a way out, for some advantage they could use. Then she saw it, a soldier fumbling with a device on his belt, a small, circular object that emitted a faint hum. He held it up, and a bright blue light flickered to life, projecting a net of energy that expanded as he threw it toward one of the dragons. The dragon dodged, but barely, the net grazing its wing before embedding itself in the ground. Arya's eyes narrowed. They're using traps, she realized. They're trying to wear the dragons down, to catch them one by one. An idea sparked in her mind, risky and reckless, but it was all she had. She crawled toward the fallen soldier, grabbing the device he'd dropped, a cylindrical object with buttons and a blinking screen. She didn't know exactly what it was, but she had a hunch. She pressed a few buttons. hoping it wouldn't explode in her hands, and a holographic interface flickered to life. The display was simple, a map of the forest, marked with the soldiers' positions and the trajectory of the hovering craft above. Arya glanced back at the dragons, still locked in battle, and a strange determination settled over her. She wasn't a hero, wasn't even sure she understood what she was doing, but she had gotten them into this, and she wasn't going to abandon them now. She took a deep breath, then activated the device. The map blinked, and she felt a tremor in the ground as the device sent a signal through the forest, a beacon that disrupted the soldiers' communications. The soldiers hesitated, their movements faltering as their orders became garbled and confused. It wasn't much, but it was enough. "Now!" she shouted, her voice barely carrying over the chaos. The dragon she had freed looked at her, its eyes gleaming with understanding. It let out a sharp cry, rallying the other dragons, and together they surged forward, pushing the soldiers back. The tide began to turn, the soldiers retreating under the combined assault of the dragons and the disruption of their communications. Arya felt a thrill of victory, a sense that they might just escape this nightmare. But then she heard a sound that froze her blood, a low, mechanical whir, building into a roar as the hovering craft descended, its massive engines tearing through the night. The ship lowered, its hull gleaming, and a door slid open to reveal a figure standing on the edge. This one was different, taller, with a presence that radiated authority. His armor was darker, reinforced, his helmet adorned with a symbol that Arya didn't recognize. He stepped forward, surveying the chaos with a calm, calculating gaze. The dragons stopped, their eyes fixed on this new threat, their bodies tense and wary. Arya felt the weight of his gaze as it fell on her, cold and unfeeling, as if she were nothing more than an insect in his path. She knew, instinctively, that this was no ordinary soldier. This was someone who commanded not just soldiers, but entire worlds. He raised a hand, and the soldiers fell back, forming a line behind him. His voice amplified, smooth and dangerous. "You've caused enough trouble, child. Stand down now, and I might consider mercy." Arya's heart pounded, fear clawing at her insides. But she couldn't back down, not now. She had made her choice, and there was no going back. She took a step forward, standing between him and the dragons, her hands clenched into fists. "They're not yours to take," she said, her voice steady, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. The man regarded her with a faint smirk, a look that sent a shiver down her spine. "Foolish," he murmured. "Brave, perhaps, but foolish." With a flick of his wrist, he signaled his soldiers, and they raised their weapons, aiming directly at her. Arya's heart raced, her mind scrambling for a way out, a final act of defiance. She glanced at the dragons, and the one she had freed met her gaze, something fierce and unyielding in its eyes. Then, in a sudden, decisive movement, the dragon unfurled its wings, blocking her from view as it faced the soldiers. The others followed suit, creating a wall of scales and muscle between her and the enemy. Arya realized, with a surge of emotion she couldn't name, that they were protecting her, standing with her against a force they couldn't hope to defeat. As the standoff stretched, a single thought echoed in her mind, a truth she had been too afraid to acknowledge until now. This was never just about her helping them. This was a bond, a pact formed in fire and blood, and it would not be broken. The commander raised his hand, preparing to give the order to fire. Arya felt a tear slip down her cheek, a silent farewell, and then the commander's hand hovered, ready to give the final order. Arya held her breath, eyes locked on the dragons standing before her, their bodies forming an unbreakable shield. This was it. She was out of options, and yet she felt a fierce resolve. If this was to be the end, she would face it with them. But in that tense moment, just as the commander's hand began to fall, a low vibration hummed beneath Arya's feet, a subtle shift in the ground that only she and the dragons seemed to notice. It was like the forest itself was stirring, responding to the silent call of the dragons, a signal that reached into the very bones of this world. The commander faltered, momentarily distracted as his visor picked up the seismic anomaly. He glanced down, his fingers twitching. "What's happening?" he muttered, his voice barely audible over the comms. His soldiers exchanged nervous glances, their confident stance suddenly wavering. Before anyone could react, the ground erupted around them, roots twisting up from the forest floor with a life and purpose of their own. These weren't ordinary roots, they were thick, wiry tendrils, pulsing with bioluminescent veins that cast an eerie glow over the clearing. The roots shot up and coiled around the soldiers' legs, pulling them down, restraining them with a force that defied human strength. The soldiers struggled, their weapons firing wildly as they attempted to free themselves. But the roots only tightened, as if responding to the dragon's silent command. The commander shouted orders, but his voice was drowned out by the panicked cries of his squad, their disciplined ranks descending into chaos. Arya watched, awestruck, as the forest seemed to come alive, each tree and vine moving with a purpose she couldn't fully comprehend. The dragons didn't attack. They simply stood back, watching as the forest did the work for them. It was as if the planet itself was defending its own, the dragons and the land, two forces in perfect harmony, protecting each other. The commander, realizing his control slipping away, turned his gaze on Arya, his eyes narrowed in fury. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice dripping with rage. "This isn't over." Arya met his gaze, a small, defiant smile tugging at her lips. "I didn't do anything," she replied calmly. "You brought this on yourself." His face twisted in anger, and he struggled against the roots, one hand reaching for a hidden weapon on his belt. But before he could activate it, the dragon beside Arya stepped forward, its eyes fixed on the commander with a piercing intelligence that transcended words. The dragon raised its head, emitting a low, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through the air, reverberating with a power that silenced the clearing. The roots tightened, pulling the commander and his soldiers down until they were immobilized, bound to the earth as if they had become a part of it. The bioluminescent veins glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the dragon's low hum, as though the planet itself were drawing strength from the creature's presence. Arya watched, a deep sense of awe settling over her. She had spent her life studying the planets her parents explored, reading about alien ecosystems and the interconnectedness of life in the universe. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The dragon's bond with the planet was not one of dominance or control, but of mutual respect, a symbiotic relationship that transcended the artificial constructs her people had imposed. The commander's voice cut through her thoughts, strained and desperate. "You think you've won," he spat, his words dripping with venom. "This changes nothing. The Unity Corps will come. They'll burn this forest to ash if that's what it takes to reclaim what's theirs." Arya looked down at him, feeling a strange mix of pity and contempt. He couldn't see it. The beauty, the interconnectedness of this world. To him, everything was something to be owned, controlled, exploited. He couldn't fathom a life beyond conquest and subjugation. "Maybe they'll come," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of finality. "But they won't find you, and they won't find these dragons." The commander's eyes widened as he realized her meaning, his struggles intensifying as he tried to pull free from the roots. But it was too late. The roots tightened one last time, drawing him down into the earth. He screamed, a sound of rage and disbelief that echoed through the clearing before fading into silence. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the forest was still again. The roots retreated, sinking back into the ground, leaving no trace of the soldiers who had invaded this sacred place. The clearing was quiet, the air thick with a sense of finality. Arya exhaled, her shoulders sagging as the tension drained from her body. She looked up at the dragon beside her, meeting its gaze with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "Thank you," she whispered, the words feeling inadequate but sincere. The dragon lowered its head, brushing its snout against her hand in a gesture of quiet acceptance. In that moment, Arya felt a connection, a true understanding that went beyond language or species. They had shared something profound, a bond forged in the crucible of danger and sacrifice. As the other dragons gathered around, Arya felt a pang of sadness. She knew, instinctively, that this was goodbye. They had protected her, saved her, but this was their world, their home. She was a visitor here, a passing presence in a life that stretched back generations. The dragon she had freed stepped forward, nudging her gently with its snout, as if urging her to climb on its back one last time. Arya hesitated, a lump forming in her throat. She knew that once she left, she would likely never see them again. But she also knew that her place was elsewhere, among her own people, sharing the story of what she had seen here, of the beauty and strength that defied understanding. With a final, lingering touch, she climbed onto the dragon's back, feeling the familiar warmth and strength beneath her. The other dragons spread their wings, lifting into the sky in a synchronized ascent, their bodies gliding through the air with a grace that took her breath away. They flew together, the dragons and the human girl, rising above the forest and soaring over the landscape. Arya looked down, her heart swelling as she took in the sight of the world below, the forests, the rivers, the hidden valleys that had become a part of her soul. She felt a profound sense of belonging, a connection that transcended species or worlds. As they reached the edge of the forest, the dragon carrying her banked gently, circling once before descending to a clearing near the makeshift camp where her parents were waiting. She felt a pang of regret, a wish that she could stay, but she knew that her journey here had come to an end. The dragon landed, lowering its head to allow her to slide off. She took one last look, memorizing every detail, every shimmer of its scales in the fading light. She wanted to say something, to express the depth of her gratitude, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply placed her hand on its snout, a silent farewell. The dragon looked at her with those wise, ancient eyes, and for a moment she thought she saw something like sadness in its gaze. Then it turned, spreading its wings and lifting into the sky, joining the others as they disappeared into the horizon. Arya watched them go, standing alone in the clearing as the last light faded from the sky. She felt an ache in her chest, a bittersweet mix of sorrow and joy, of loss and discovery. She knew that what she had experienced was something rare, something that few would ever understand. It was hers alone, a memory that would stay with her for the rest of her life. She turned back toward the camp, her steps heavy but her heart full. As she walked, she thought about the world she was returning to, the world of humans, of exploration and discovery, of rules and restrictions that seemed so small compared to the boundless freedom she had felt here. But she also knew that she carried something within her, a secret strength, a quiet knowledge that the Unity Core and all their technology could never touch. She had seen a world beyond their grasp, a world that existed in harmony and balance, a world that didn't need to be conquered or controlled, and she would keep that world safe, even if only in her memory. When she reached the camp, her parents were waiting, their faces etched with worry and relief. They rushed to her, hugging her tightly, their questions tumbling out in a flood of concern. But Arya only smiled, a calm, steady smile that hinted at things they could never understand. For now, she had no answers to give them. This was her story, her truth, and she would carry it alone. And as she looked up at the stars, she knew that somewhere out there, the dragons soared through the night, wild and free, guardians of a world that defied the chains of men. And in her heart, she soared with them, forever bound to the sky and the land, to the fierce, untamed beauty of a life unchained. The story was complete, closed like a book returned to the shelf, its pages filled with memories that would linger forever, untouched and untarnished by time or space. It was simply the end,